welcome to another edition of Inside the Exit. I'm your host, Drew Brantley, joined today by Bob Frisch. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Drew.
Guys, today we're talking about earnouts and seller notes. So when you're selling a company, most sellers, you want to get the most for your company that you can, or you have a number in mind, or you want to push people to try to give you more money at the end of the day. Sometimes when you're selling a company, there's a gap between what you believe is the right number for the company and what a buyer is willing to sell. And oftentimes, earnouts and seller notes are financial tools that are able to kind of bridge that gap in valuation. It's basically a way for you to get more money for your company, but you don't get it at the close, when the wires flow. Sometimes it means these amounts are going to get paid out over multiple years or a 5-year period or 2 years or whatever it is. So let's talk a little bit about what an earnout is and what a seller note is, and then a few details around kind of what you can expect. Now, a seller note is a debt piece of paper. It's just kind of like a loan from a bank almost. And a seller note is a guaranteed amount that you're going to get over a period of time. A lot of times we see seller notes that have kind of 5 or 6 year terms to them. You're allowed to put, kind of a normal interest rate on there of, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10%, whatever it is that you agree to for that seller note. Sometimes they have a current interest payment. Sometimes they have what's called a PIK, or payment in kind. And a payment in kind is basically a way where, let's say you have a seller note that's $100,000. And basically, let's say it's 10% for easy numbers, and let's say it's a 10% PIK. Then that means that every year they're going to add 10% of the value of the principal, which is that $100,000, to the principal. So at the end of year one, the principal, or the amount of that note or that debt, is going to go from $100,000 to $110,000. So then in year two, all of a sudden, your PIK, or your payment in kind, is going to accrue at that same 10%, but it's going to be accruing off that $110,000, not the $100,000. So some different ways that you can structure that. One of the really important things to know about a seller note is that if you have a seller note as a part of your structure, and the buyer is intending to put future debt on the business, whether it's senior debt from a bank or mezzanine or subordinated debt, you're going to need to expect that your seller note is going to be subordinated to the other lenders in the deal. Basically, from a bank or a lender's perspective, they're going to want to know that they're going to get their money before you get your money. Now, some of you might be saying, wait a minute, that's not fair. Why can't I get paid? In a bank's mind, you're already getting some money, or they're assuming that you're getting some money off the table in the sale. So let's say in that example, you sell your company for $1 million, and $100,000 of that's going to roll over kind of not roll over, but it's going to be in the form of a seller note. So you're getting $900,000 off the table. You've already gotten some money off the table. You should put some money in your pocket. Well, the bank's going to say, look, you've already gotten some money. We're going to want to come out in a first position ahead of you, so you're going to need to be subordinated to that lender. So oftentimes, it's okay to get your interest back on that note, but you can talk about having some amortization, meaning getting some of that principal back ahead of that 5 or 6 year time period, or whatever your term is. But expect that if another lender comes in, you might need to stop that amortization or not get any principal back for a period of time. So a lot of ways that this can get structured, but hopefully this gives you a sense about it. Bob?
Yeah, seller notes are something that oftentimes put into a transaction. You're selling your company, and as Drew pointed out, there's a difference between what you want and what the other group is offering, or there's a difference in the amount of financing that's going on in place. But for whatever reason, you as the seller decide, I know my company. I like my company. I know they can pay me some debt if I put some debt on the books. So I'm willing to take back a seller note. I'll take X at closing in terms of cash at close, but I'll also take a seller note. That helps the buyer buy. And frankly, to you know that note is probably good because you've lived with a company. It's your company. You do get interest on that note every year. But you do have to understand that if there is a bank involved in the deal, and mainly a senior lender, whether that be a bank or any other senior lender, that person at the top with the first lien on everything, then that lender is almost undoubtedly going to want the amortization, your payment of principal back, that is the amortization, is going to be after they get their money out. So you get your interest for that maybe 5-year period, but that bank gets paid out first, and then the seller note. We often see people structure things where, on the buyer side, where they're actually letting the seller note get paid out before the senior bank. And what happens is that's almost a surefire way of killing the deal. So the sellers, as we represent them, they have to understand once they enter into a seller note that they're not going to be paid out early for that seller note, that it's going to be after the senior bank. Yeah,
you can put that in the LOI or the terms of the structure, but just realize, as we've said now twice, if there's another lender in there, you're going to need to be prepared to subordinate to them. It's just kind of the way it works. Now, let's talk about earnouts. So seller notes are, again, it's a debt. You're basically guaranteed that amount, assuming the whole company doesn't blow up at the end of the day or go south. But an earnout is a little bit different. An earnout is typically something that's put in place where you say your company's going to do X over the next couple of years, and basically the buyer's saying, okay, put your money where your mouth is. We'll pay you more for the company, but we're going to pay it in the form of an earnout. And an earnout, very simply, it's a performance-based payment that, based off you hitting certain numbers, you're going to get paid an additional amount. Now, earnouts can get structured in all different types of ways. There's not a right or a wrong way to structure an earnout. But in general, a lot of times what we see, some consistent things that we see are earnouts. Typically, buyers want to see earnouts structured in a way where the EBITDA or the performance of the company is in an upward trend. A lot of times buyers don't like to pay earnouts, if the company's not performing. So for example, let's say you're doing $5 million of EBITDA this year and you say you're going to do 6 next year. Well, if the company comes in and they do 4 next year, then they're not going to want to pay you because the company's not doing the 6 that you said it was going to do, especially if you're still involved in the company. If you're not involved, earnouts can be a little bit more of a tricky animal, but especially if you're staying involved, you're running the company, people are going to want to see the company continue to perform to be able to hit those. So a lot of times, again, earnouts are put in place where you say, look, I know my company's going to do X, Y, Z. They say, great, we're going to pay you for it, but we're going to delay that payment until that performance happens. Sometimes we have people that say, oh, I'm scared by an earnout. I'm not going to get paid that earnout. Doesn't mean you're not going to get paid, but just beware that if you're saying all this great stuff's going to happen, be prepared. They might want to delay some of that payment for the sale of the company in the form of an earnout.
Yeah. It's absolutely true. Earnouts are based on performance, no doubt about it. And how you structure it, whether it's beyond revenue or EBITDA or however you structure an earnout, many ways to structure it. A seller note, on the other hand, is a guaranteed payment of a debt instrument that you have structured into the deal, and no matter what the performance, as long as the company doesn't go bankrupt, you're going to get paid in a certain amount of time, that amount of money, and you're going to get interest each year. Earnout's not that situation. Earnout means that performance is there, you show us the performance, and we'll pay you more money.
Absolutely. One of the things to be aware of, we've talked to sellers in the past and buyers for that matter, and sometimes they get a little ahead of themselves on the earnout, and they'll structure an earnout in a way to where, let's say the company's doing $3 million of EBITDA, and then they structure an earnout where they're going to pay the seller, they're going to pay you $3 million in an earnout the second year after you hit that number. That's not always the way buyers like to do it, because at the end of the day, they're basically saying we're giving away everything the company's making. So if there's any debt on the company, they're not going to be able to pay the debt. They're not going to be able to pay taxes out of the cash flow of the business. They're going to need to finance that earnout via some other debt instrument or through some lender or additional equity that they're putting in or something like that. So, just be aware that, an earnout typically is not going to be, don't expect to get the full EBITDA or cash flow of the business in a given year. If you're wanting a lot more than they're wanting to pay, expect that to be doled out over a period of time, especially if the buyer's going to plan to put some debt on the business. They're going to need to service that debt. They're going to need to maintain a certain amount of cash in the business, to be able to do what they do. And so a lot of times they'll want to spread that out over a multi-year period. And that's okay, again, as long as, you and they feel that it's an appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the earnout, look at it this way. The earnout is, they say you may hit it, but we want you to share that risk. We're willing to pay it, but you're going to share in that risk because we don't know. You're the seller. You know your company better than we do, perhaps. If you hit it, we're happy to pay this amount, whatever is agreed to and how it's agreed to. But if you don't hit it, then we don't have to pay you. And that's the way an earnout works. So it's a sharing of the risk, but it also allows the seller to get to a certain price that he's much happier with, knowing future performance is on the way.
Well, guys, thanks for watching this edition of Inside the Exit. Today we hashed out a little bit of the detail around earnouts and seller notes. Hopefully you found this to be helpful. Check out our other videos, hit subscribe below, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks.